The meeting's coming to order right now. It's 4:30. And we've got some minor housekeeping business we have to attend to. First, before I say, everybody on the subcommittee's gotten a copy of this, right? This is just for your, to help you with understanding the whole process with the manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers. It's nice. Thank you very much for putting that together. All right, so our first order of business is we've got 4 little housekeeping issues we have to attend to. We would like to add HB 1595 to the docket, and we have a request to strike.
So moved. Second.
And that is a recorded vote. Clerk will close the roll. Okay, we have 6 yeas and 0 nays. The motion to strike is passed. We also have HB 614. The patron would like to continue that to 2021.
So moved. Second.
And that requires a voice vote. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The bill has been continued to 2021. We have a HB 937. Would like to go by for the day. That's without objection, so I don't need any vote on that. So we're going to send that by for the day. Yeah, that's by the chairman's prerogative. Delegate Knight explained that to me. And then the last order of business for our housekeeping is Delegate Leftwich's HB 1379. We're going to request the chairman to refer that to courts without objection. All right. I didn't hear that. All right, so that's being that's been overruled. So that's going to courts. So thank you very much. We are now going to try to use the sign-up sheet, and I see Delegate Weber is here. And let's hear, you've got 2 bills left.
Yes, and thank you for the chairman's prerogative. Appreciate that. Both these bills have a lot of friends. One has friends that don't like it, and one has friends that like it. So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, just to keep matters, positive. We'll start positive and end negatively, maybe. I don't know.
Which would you like to start with?
I would like to start with HB 949, and there is the special events. There is a substitute. If I could.
Council's going to distribute the substitute.
And if I could explain the substitute. So the idea was brought to me by the town of Warrenton. Essentially what they wanted to do was be able to expand their special events, and through the drafting process, and then also with the Senate subcommittee that happened this morning, and working with ABC, it was determined that they can help determine the area where the special event is going to be, which is why we struck some of the language. And then it literally changes the number of events as well as the length of those events, so that they could essentially use a whole weekend, not just 24 hours, and not have to utilize a bunch of different licenses to be able to have one section.
Do we have a motion? Yeah, Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate,
Yeah. Delegate Hurst, hold on one moment.
You want to move it first?
Substitute,
Okay.
yeah. Second? Okay, all those in favor of moving of the
Aye.
substitute? Okay, the substitute is before us. Delegate Hurst.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So am I correct that in the original on line 138, local historic district designated by a locality pursuant to 15.2-2306 is not in your substitute?
You would be correct.
And just curious why that is.
Because when you began to look at the historic district in Warrenton, I mean, their thought was to be able to move it around the historic district, but ABC felt that they could work with the town on, specializing their event as to where they wanted to have it. And the historic district was much bigger than, it would have been a very large area And so ABC felt that it would be very hard to enforce it. At least that was my understanding. So we didn't want to make it hard. The big thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is that, we'll have a festival or something, and it'll go, Friday and Saturday, and rather than having two folks have to get two licenses, and then the town could just get the special event for the weekend. And that's
Delegate Weber, does this conform with the bill that you mentioned passed in the Senate this morning?
yes, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any other questions for the patron? Do we have folks for the bill who'd like to come and testify? Please state your name and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Lisk, representing the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association. We support this measure. We think it's just a very small expansion of a bill that was passed last year during the General Assembly that's proven to be very successful in communities that have implemented this opportunity. It's helped the local businesses, and we think this will be a benefit for Virginia's restaurants. So we support the measure.
thank you. Is there any others? Anybody else in favor? Anybody against? Yeah, we have Delegate Knight.
Could I ask a question of maybe Mr. Daniel? Mr. Daniel, of course, you remember we passed this bill as historic districts, and that was fleshed out. It's not fleshed out now. We had 12 days. Now we're having 16 special events, and some of them are 3 days. So do you view this as a problem for ABC with enforcement, and do you have a position on the bill?
Thank you. Appreciate the question. John Daniel, Virginia ABC. Mr. Chairman, Delegate Knight, we, as a result of working with Delegate Weber, Senator Vogel, and the City Council folks from Warrenton, came up with the substitute that's before you today that works, I think, for the town of Warrenton and what they want to do. Most of the enforcement in these licenses is done at the local level with support from our enforcement division. So we've run it through enforcement. Chief Kirby is okay with it. We have the resources to implement, hopefully successfully, the provisions in the bill.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Any further testimony? You have the last word, Delegate.
The bill kind of speaks for itself. I mean, that's,
So
the town
Warrenton's
would like
gonna
to
be
do a
the
little
place
bit
to go.
more and have a little bit more flexibility, and they feel that the bill does that.
I'll move to report the substitute.
Okay, we have a motion to report the substitute. And that is a recorded vote, correct? So all those in favor, we're going to clerk, please open the roll. Signify by saying aye with the green button here. Or nay. There you go. Clerk can close the rolls, please. The bill passes 6-0. Thank you, Delegate. And you have a second bill?
Yes, this one has friends that do not like the bill. And so essentially what I'd like to do is just kind of present the bill, and I guess those that are against will probably destroy the bill.
Okay.
I've been here a while. But essentially what the town of Warrenton, we've got a distillery that they would like to, a local distillery, not from Campbell County. And what they would like to do is be able to have that distillery to have a remote store, very much like we've got a cidery that has a remote tasting room. And essentially they would like to try and bring that there. So they asked me to carry this piece of legislation. Judging what happened in the Senate, those same friends of that bill will probably testify against this bill as well. But that's what the bill does. That's what the town was trying to accomplish, and that's the conversation that we wanted to start today.
Do we have any questions for the patron? Anybody want to testify in support?
I will say that my councilman had to leave
Okay,
this
so we did
afternoon.
have
He
somebody,
testified this morning in the Senate bill, but
but it didn't help.
no. No, sir, it did not.
How about the line starts back there for those in opposition? Anybody in opposition?
Friends.
Yeah.
Once again, Tom Lisk with the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association. And we really did like the last bill. This bill, not so much. Part of Alcohol regulation in Virginia, particularly with mixed beverages, spirits, is based on the concept of restaurants serving mixed beverages and serving food. We were very supportive as an industry of letting distilleries serve alcohol at the distillery. But creating these remote licenses creates for us, we think, unfair competition, because we're not talking tastings here. We're not talking about, like you can go to ABC store and get a half-ounce sample. We're talking about full cocktails. And this bill would allow each distillery to set up to 4 remote bars serving full cocktails, no food requirement, no kitchen requirement, and we think that's unfair competition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Phil Boykin with the Virginia Beer Wholesalers Association. We have longstanding policy concerns against this, and we've opposed this type of legislation before. One thing is there is a means by which the craft distillers can get this. They can do limited permits. I think they have 8 of those a year, ABC, or they have a limited number. I'm sorry. Yeah, eight numbers that they could do it, so there's another way they could do it. Also, this essentially would lead to a liquor store on every corner, because you have to remember that a distillery is an ABC store. So we have those concerns.
Mr. Boykin, quick question. How many distilleries are there?
There are 46 as of this morning.
So you would multiply that by 5?
4.
4.
Or is his bill 5? Okay, 5. So yeah,
5 more.
the bill this morning was 4, so I guess by 5. So you would essentially be putting a liquor store in every corner. So,
Thank
thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ken Hutchison on behalf of Anheuser-Busch. We too do not support the bill. We tend to oppose anything that would create separate classes and privileges extended to one alcohol class versus the other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody further? I think we've gotten the message.
Mr. Chairman, Stan Tretiak
Yeah.
with Miller Coors, and I'll just echo the sentiments of my 2 compadres.
Thank you very much. Delegate, you have the last word?
I really don't have anything to say, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to quit the pain and suffering. I'd like to make a motion to gently lay this bill on the table.
There's been a motion to gently lay this on the table. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? That's a recorded vote. So would the clerk open the roll?
It's called a mercy killing.
Lay on the table, gently.
I appreciate the gentleness. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Delegate. Did I say it's, yep, it lays on the table 6-0. Who else do we have here? The next person signed up is Delegate Tran. You're up, Delegate. Your bill HB 1088.
Ooh, the podium mic is on and active. Good afternoon.
It's 11:42, I think.
I'm sorry, 1142.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, 1142.
So I'm here to present House Bill 1142, and we've been working with our lawyer Brooks to have an amendment that would address some of the concerns that have come up in conversations with members of the committee. Do I move the amendment? Do you move the amendment?
Do you have it? Do we have an amendment?
Yep, Mr. Chair, there would be 6 line amendments total. Most of them are technical to accommodate the change, but I will run through them quickly. The first is on line 4, after section 4.1-309, strike and 16.1-278.9. The second is on line 11, after section 4.1-309, strike and 16.1-278.9. The third is on line 18, after shall, insert possess or. The second is also on line 18, after beverage, strike at a facility hosting, insert while attending. The next amendment is on line 19, after sporting event, strike the rest of line 19 and all of line 20, insert hosted at a non-school facility. And then the last amendment will be on line 26. We are going to strike the rest of the bill, effectively removing section 16.1-278.9 and all of its amendments from the legislation.
Thank you, counsel.
Delegate Kruzak, can we just read that back?
Yeah.
Can council read that whole sentence out on line 18 to 20?
Mr. Chair, the sentence would read, No person shall possess or drink any alcoholic beverage while attending a public elementary or secondary school sporting event hosted at a non-school facility.
I can't hear.
Does everybody understand?
I'll move the amendment.
Okay, we have a motion to move the amendment. Do we have a second? Second. All right, that requires a voice vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Nay, the ayes have it. The amendment passes. Delegate Tran? All right, do you want to speak to the bill?
Sure.
And what
Thank
this
you.
does? Thanks.
So let me speak to the whole bill and then why we amended it today. So a constituent has brought up to my attention the fact that our school system in Fairfax County has now contracted out some of our sporting events so that you have schools playing different sporting games and competitions at a third-party site. And so while there is a prohibition on the possession and consumption of alcohol on elementary or secondary schools, if the sporting competition and event is taking place on school grounds, there's no such prohibition and protection for our kids if it's taking place off school grounds in a third-party site. And what we've learned is that there are other school districts who are also kind of moving in the same route for hosting some of their sporting competitions. In addition, it turns out that golfing occurs at off-school grounds because many schools don't have golf courses. So we wanted to make sure that we are embedding into our code the same type of protections that are afforded to our kids when they are playing in sporting competitions on school grounds. The original bill, I think, for some of us, some of our colleagues on the committee, was a little too broad in terms of saying that you couldn't consume alcohol at any part of the facility that was hosting a sporting event. And so we're narrowing it to just if you're in attendance at that school event on a third-party site.
Is it an event or a sport? Is it a sporting
event?
Sporting event.
Sporting event.
Do we have any questions for the patron? Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification, not just how would this impact if you're at let's say a sports boosters event where it's adults that are raising money for a sporting event? Would that be covered under this as written? You see what I'm getting at?
Yes, that was raised. You'd have to, I look to our lawyers to see if a booster event is a sporting event.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe we have a definition of sporting event, so that would have to be interpreted, unless we wanted to define it in the bill.
Thank you. Do you have further questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that clarification would be worthwhile. I mean, just speaking to my area, there's a lot of sports boosters events that if got caught up in it would be a totally different thing than I think the purpose of your bill, right? Which is the purpose of your bill is at a kid's sporting event, right? So if this is an adult fundraiser for Sports Boosters Club and alcohol was banned there, that would be different from if we're at, my kid's soccer match, right?
So if we said a sporting event with something like with children present or with students present, would that be acceptable? Because that would exclude booster events with booster fundraisers with students in attendance with alcohol, which I think.
Could you say it's competition? Is that enough?
Competition events, school sporting competitions?
Yeah, there's...
Sorry, it's just really hot.
Chairman, there's no definition of sporting competition either, but I think the plain meaning seems a little bit narrower, so that might work.
Yeah. Yes. Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, to add to the discourse, I remember when we prohibited smoking from school-sponsored activities last year, that there was great discussion over a very similar issue of, the jurisdiction of that smoking ban for just the part where that school activity is or for the entire facility itself. I wonder if it might clean up to not have undefined terms or previously unintroduced terms into the code that then, would have common law meetings. I like the way we did it last year where, it would be in Title, well, I don't know if we want to be dictating school board policy in Title IV, but school-sponsored activity as opposed to, a school sporting event, which, I think leaves some room for interpretation that clearly has engendered some ambiguity among the subcommittee.
Is there any other questions? Delegate
so-
Van Valkenburg, go ahead.
And so, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we would strike on line 19, school sporting event, and insert school-sponsored activity.
Does that,
So can I ask
Yes.
the delegate, Mr. Chair? So I would take it, is a booster fundraiser held by a volunteer parent organization considered a school-sponsored activity? 'Cause if it is, then you can't smoke there either. But I just would want to be consistent, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Delegate
Mr. Chairman, to the delegate, I would say it depends on whether or not the school sponsors it and how these various booster organizations, volunteer organizations, PTA organizations are organized, whether they are sponsored by the school or not.
perhaps, do you have any witnesses or any, anybody
There
wants
might
to
be somebody-
speak? Anybody want to speak in favor?
And Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to remove my motion
I'm sorry.
if we want to have further
I
discussion
think we should
before
have some,
entertaining
if
language.
you don't mind doing that.
Of course, I would request to remove my motion.
Okay, without objection. Then let's see if folks, do we have anybody who wants to testify in support of the bill? Do we have anybody who wants to testify against the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Mark Hubbard representing the Virginia High School League, and we have concerns just about the ramifications of the legislation as drafted.
What are your
Or
concerns?
Could you clarify, please, because I thought I addressed your golfing concern?
Specifically, what Delegate Hurst was referring to, would this apply to groups that are holding other sports-related events and activities, not actual competitions between students? The example that comes to mind in particular is golf. That's where this really creates an issue because golf courses are very large and they all have venues that sell alcohol and people can take alcohol in different places at the venue. And a lot of golf courses donate their space to schools to hold their competitions. And we are concerned that they would stop doing that and then the students wouldn't have any place to play.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Any further comments from the patron?
So I would just say to that last comment, I think we've narrowed the language. I would be amenable to Delegate Hurst's, I would take that as a friendly amendment to align the language in terms of versus school sporting event, school sporting competition, to using the language that was passed last year as a school-sponsored. I think it was activity, if I remember correctly. So that would align kind of some of these similar concerns in the code. But to the concern that was raised, I think we've narrowed it to being in attendance there. And so if you're at a different part of the facility, clearly not attending this activity that's sponsored by the school, I think that has covered that golfing issue.
Delegate Hurst, you want to bring back that amendment?
Yes, and again, just also trying to make sure that we're consistent. So if council has a different idea in terms of applicability from Title 22 to Title 4 here, I just, it's been my experience in my brief time here that, we like to use existing language rather than trying to come up with ambiguous or plain meaning definitions. So with that being said, I would move to strike on line 19, school sporting event, and insert school-sponsored activity.
Okay, do we have a second? All right, we have a second. All those in favor of that line amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. Do you, any final words?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any motion, any?
Move to
Okay, the clerk will open the rolls. We're reporting this with amendments. All right, delegate, the clerk will close the roll. The bill passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have, let me see, we're trying to go in order here. Delegate Knight is up, but we're going to let him go later. Is Delegate Carr? Yep, HB 1088.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 1088 would broaden permissions for walking tour companies to be able to visit breweries and other establishments licensed to sell alcohol beverages and include tasting fees for alcoholic beverages as part of the tour ticket price. There are amendments proposed by ABC. This bill is supported by Scott's Additional Boulevard Association and the Carytown Merchants Association in Richmond, as well as the Virginia Craft Brewers Guild.
I'm sorry, Delegate, did you say you have some amendments?
Yes.
Let's deal with the amendments first. This is actually an amendment in nature of a substitute.
Yes.
We're passing them out. Do we have a motion to? We have a motion. We have a second. This is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. The amendment in nature of a substitute is passed. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, Delegate Carr.
Those amendments are at the request of the ABC.
Okay.
And so Brian Beard from River City Food Tours is here to answer any questions about these particular food tours.
Great. Do we? Is that you want to come on up, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. State your name, please.
Brian Beard.
Okay. You speak to the bill.
Oh, I was up here if there were any questions about it.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the committee? Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
You may want to tell
Delegate.
how your tour operates, because people may not be familiar with what goes on.
Hold on. Delegate Hurst has got a question.
A question for the speaker or for the patron. Just curious why we want to reduce the tour guest capacity from 20 to 15. If the tour is popular enough to have 20 guests, why wouldn't we want to be able to have 20 guests?
Delegate, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Hurst, I think ABC is here to speak to that.
Mr. Daniel?
Again, John Daniel, Virginia ABC. Delegate Hurst, we actually worked with this gentleman to come up with the 15. I don't think his tours have more than 15 people. That was a manageable size group. We were trying to make these so that you could have 3 different tour groups of 15 each, so you didn't have more than 45 people at one facility at a time, because that put pressure on the licensee and on the facility, and I think was more than accommodating for what this gentleman wanted to do to grow his walking tours. The final amendment was that we'd offered was to actually put the burden on the licensee to make sure that individuals to whom they were selling alcohol were in fact of age and met all the qualifications to purchase alcohol, which is the other language you see in there. So we appreciate this gentleman and Delegate Carr working with us to get this to a place where I think it works for everybody.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about the walking tour?
Yeah,
Just
sure.
briefly.
Our walking tours are they are walking on foot tours. We visit several restaurants typically and try some of their best dishes. We are looking at being able to operate in neighborhoods that also have a high concentration of breweries and cideries, and would like to be able to visit some of those establishments as part of our tour.
Do we have any questions? Delegate Benbow.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to clarify. Is the purpose of this bill essentially to just make it so that food is not mandatory as part of the walking tour?
That's correct, and the reason is because most of the breweries and cideries in the state of Virginia do not prepare food, and so by requiring food served, it's effectively preventing us from visiting those establishments.
Delegate Delegate Knight, do you want to, no? Any other questions? Do we have anybody else to speak in support? Anybody speak against? And Virginia ABC is fine with this? Okay. We have a motion to report. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. The clerk will open the roll. All those in favor, signify by saying yay. All right. Delegate Carr, clerk will close the roll. 7-0 to report with the substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
We have Delegate Davis. We, before you were here, I think we took care of one of your bills.
I think we have one, right?
Let me see, I'm looking at,
1125 is a report. That's the one, that's what I know of.
oh, so we've, yeah,
Has two. Sorry?
okay.
Liquids. What's the other one? I'm sorry, I couldn't.
We got-
Okay, yes, sir. Yep, I got that one too. Yes, sir. Sorry. Oh, no,
yeah.
well,
Okay,
Texas
yeah,
Hold'em
go
were passing by for the day, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are
I
we
thought
going to
that
pass
was.
that? That's, we didn't actually do that before. Do we, Delegate Knight?
I think that's going to have to be referred to appropriations.
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably have to. hear the
Would,
report.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if a request has been made, but the stakeholders are all coming together. I think later on today, they've asked for that to be passed by. They're doing the same thing in the Senate on it, just to get some clarification
Yeah,
stuff.
Delegate Davis, I think we have a letter from upstairs, so we have to.
Oh, okay, so it's going either way. Okay,
Yep,
sounds
so we're
good.
going to report, we're going to, can we? We don't have to do it today? All right, well, we can, what do you, okay, it's going upstairs anyway. We're going to refer it up. So we have a motion to refer.
Report and refer. Sure.
Report and refer. Report and refer. It was, we don't have to report it? Okay, we're just, okay.
Otherwise, he has to ask the chairman to refer. The subcommittee can't make a motion to refer.
Oh, that's right.
Well-
Okay.
So you have to decide what you want to do.
Delegate Knight.
I think we're going to have to hear the thing before we can report it.
Okay. All right.
Or you could just request the chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Delegate Hurst.
Delegate Davis, you said that right now stakeholders are convening.
Yes, sir.
We have other bills on the docket. Do you think if we passed it by temporarily, that might give you enough time so we don't have to pass it by for the whole day?
I apologize, Mr. Delegate. It was Delegate. It's actually tonight. Some people came into town,
Tonight?
so it would
Oh,
be tonight.
After hours, Hold'em, okay.
Yes, sir.
They're going to try out the sport. Well, we're going to have to report, really, we're going to have to hear the bill if we're going to report it and refer it. So I think we're going to, we're going to have to go ahead and present the bill then. So we're on HB 1125.
All right. All right. Hold on one second. Okay. Mr. Chairman, so HB 1125 basically allows entities that can conduct bingo today to be able to conduct Texas Hold'em. What you'll see is the outline for the bill. And actually, Mr. Chairman, if I may, on this one, just because if we are going to hear this, if we could pass by just temporarily for the time being, do the other bill, and I'll go grab the stakeholders that are here, because I know they would like to testify, sir, and then they can at least have their say in that.
Okay, without objection? Okay, so moved. We'll go to your, what's your other bill?
The yogurt bill, sir.
Oh, yeah. The strong yogurt bill.
Yes, sir.
That is HB 353.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and tell us about that bill.
Yes, sir. So the language, Mr. Chairman, that you're looking for on this, the only changes you're going to find are in lines 136 to 138. I think this is more of a cleanup clarification bill. So a couple years ago, we allowed confectionaries to have alcohol in them, 5% or less by alcohol, as long as at the point of sale it was not in liquid form. Yogurt, by definition, is not in liquid form at the point of sale. There was some disagreements, like a clarification that kind of went on for the last 2 years. So I figured we would just include the definition from Webster's and every scientific dictionary out there that says that a liquid is things that are not gaseous or semi-solid. Semi-solid is something that does not take the shape of the container it's in, unlike a liquid that does. I apologize. I got a DNAP chemistry, so this isn't me. But I figured this would add a little bit of clarification to the process, Mr. Chairman.
I think we're going to have a few chemistry questions for you. So, do we have any? I'll start. I've got one. Right. What kind of alcohol are we talking about infusing the yogurt with?
Well, the one I know about, sir, is brandy.
Brandy. Do you know what temperature Fahrenheit that brandy freezes?
I don't know what temperature it freezes, but I do know that at the point of sale, it cannot be a liquid. So if it happens to be a liquid at the point of sale when mixed with a yogurty substance, then that would not qualify for sale underneath this. But if they can put up to 5% inside of yogurt that is not a liquid at point of sale, it would qualify.
So what is it at point of sale? There's only solids, gases, and liquids.
And semi-solid, sir.
Is semi-solid? Does anybody take science in high school there? I don't remember. Semi-solid. So is that what you're hanging your hat on here?
Well, sir, so I actually called a gentleman that I knew who actually was a PhD, and then I looked at, and I Googled semi-solid, and sure enough, there actually is. It's a semi-solid is something that may change its shape. It goes from a solid to a liquid over time, but is not a liquid 100% of the time, nor is it a solid 100% of the time. The purpose of this bill originally was to prevent things like mixed drinks, basically, sir, being sold as an alcoholic beverage, as a drink. And this is just to clarify that frozen yogurt is not that type of substance, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Hurst.
I think you could also say that mayonnaise or anything that's in suspension is also kind of a semi-solid. I have a question, though, for the patron. Where does this currently stand then? And maybe I could go get my own bill, but rum cakes, tequila cakes, the liquid that is in that rum cake, the alcohol that's in there is still in its liquid form, even though it's in, preparation, because you soak the cake in the liquid so that it, absorbs into the cake. It still remains a liquid. You can't sell rum cakes?
So it's not that the liquid being used can't be a liquid. It's the confectionery itself cannot be a liquid. So, for example, a milkshake is a confectionery. A cake is a confectionery. A cupcake is a confectionery. So what this says already 2 years ago when the bill was passed, that you can put in a cake and a cupcake. I would argue that it allowed to be inside of a frozen yogurt already. There was some concern whether it did or not, and that's where the definition comes in, Delegate.
The one thing I see, Delegate, the big difference is that when you're cooking, the alcohol evaporates, and so it's not nearly as strong as this situation where you're when you've got nice semi-frozen alcohol, brandy in this case, you're going to have it's going to be quite powerful.
Mr. Chairman, I would venture to say that you've never had a really good rum cake. Which is put in after the fact. It's it's not cooked inside there. It's added after the fact in most cases, and quite potent. At least the ones that are typically in Italian bakery, sir. But your point's well taken, and that's where the 5% limitation comes from, sir.
Okay. Do we have
Mr. Chairman?
any further questions, Delegate Hurst?
I believe David May has some clarification he'd like to share.
Okay, Dave.
Mr. Chair, just regarding the issue of whether the language relates to the confectionery or the alcohol at the time that it's sold. What the current code language says is any alcohol contained in such confectionery shall not be in liquid form at the time the confectionery is sold. So it actually does prohibit the alcohol from being in liquid form. I'm not a scientist. I'm not sure when a liquid transfers into a solid, but I think, and ABC can correct me if I'm wrong, that the interpretation has been regarding enforcement of what does the end product look like. Does it look like a liquid? Does it look like a drink? Does it look like a candy shell with liquor inside of it? Or does it look like a cake? I think if it was a cake, it would be permissible, whereas if it were a chocolate egg that had liquid spirits inside of it, then it would not be permissible.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So let's hear from John Daniel, our expert.
Good afternoon once again. So the first thing in consideration that you need to, I think, recall that this is an off-premise license. So everybody, wherever these are sold, they're going to be taken off premise. So if you have a semi-solid at the point of sale, and I go perhaps to the boardwalk and walk a couple of blocks, what do I then have? And these are 5% by volume, alcohol volume.
Slurpees.
Couple, Slurpees, yeah, whatever. David's interpretation was right with respect to the way this started with cupcakes. We have struggled with the definition of liquid for some time, but I think it's because we maybe just can't go to Webster's. I'm a lawyer by training, and I got to go a little bit to Black's, and then it just complicates things, which is where we are with all of this, I think. So important, I think, that it is off premises, and why it may be a semi-solid when you take it away from the window. I don't know what it is a block away.
Thank you. Do you have anybody to speak in support?
No, Mr. Chairman, they're down there actually working, so they couldn't get up
What
here
about
today.
anybody speak in opposition? And Delegates Van Valkenburg?
Delegate Davis, I kind of ground me in what this is for.
Sure.
And then what you think it would permit.
Sure. I appreciate that, Delegate. So what this allows is for alcoholic flavored yogurt. That's exactly what it's for. It's just like what we approved with cupcakes. It is not meant to be more than 5% by volume. It is not meant to be in liquid form. The alcohol is not going to be able to run outside of this yogurt. It's not poured over top the yogurt. It can't be that liquid over top. This would still deny it. It just allows basically for a flavoring for the most part. And it allows for that to be sold just like you can sell alcohol, minimal amounts of alcohol in your cupcakes today, if that helps answer the delegate's question.
Okay, thank you, Delegate. You have the last word.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the discussion today. I would argue that whatever interpretation you want to use, with regards to liquid, when alcohol is in a frozen yogurt, if the frozen yogurt is in a semi-solid state, the alcohol is in a semi-solid state. So I would hope that we would allow alcohol to be added to frozen yogurt, just like we did the cupcakes. And if not, then an amendment that actually clarifies so people are not stuck in limbo with the definition that exists today in code, Mr. Chairman.
All right, do we have a motion, Delegate Hurst?
Yeah, sorry,
you have a
Mr.
question?
Chairman. No, speaking to the bill.
Okay.
I am newly on this subcommittee, but with great respect for the patron and for what he's attempting to do, and what this General Assembly has done for the past few years, I just worry. You say yogurt and then you say frozen yogurt. In both cases, I just wonder if we're not creating a new class of alcoholic products that are going to be consumed by adults but looked at by children, and are we coming up with a whole new class of consumer products that are going to be very tempting for our children to want to consume that have an alcohol content in them? And I would be happy to hear any words that the delegate has, but for that reason, I'm inclined to oppose this bill.
If I can answer that, Mr. Chairman, and Delegate, you're right. Yogurt would not qualify. Yogurt takes the shape of the container. We've all bought yogurt at a store that's not frozen. The frozen yogurt, if we've all given to a TCB-wise, does not take the shape. I agree that maybe a potential concern if you get it home, but I would say that a cupcake with alcohol at the house looks like a cupcake to a child. A frozen yogurt at the house looks like a frozen yogurt to a child. I would hope that the parents have the attention to make sure that the child is not able to receive or acquire either one of those. But there's a difference between yogurt and frozen yogurt.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would say is that TCBY actually stands for This Can't Be Yogurt. So I would just take issue with that reference.
You're right. It definitely would not be yogurt. All right. Do we have a Delegate Van Valkenburg? Do you have a motion?
A comment and a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I would just associate myself with Delegate Hurst, but I would also say 5% seems more than a flavoring that we're drizzling on top. And so I would move to gently lie this on the table.
Second.
We have a motion to gently lay this on the table, and that is non-debatable, so the clerk will open the roll. Clerk. Clerk will close the roll. The bill HB 353 is laid on the table 5-3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go get the stakeholders of the poker bill.
Okay.
Thank you.
And in the meantime, if they're here right now, you can go ahead and start. It looks like, do you have them?
Yes, sir, we are. Okay.
Okay.
Matt, you ready? Then, Mr. Chairman, I'll direct everyone's attention to HB 1125, which is the bill that allows bingo halls to conduct Texas Hold'em tournaments. We allow them to basically have bingo today. This just opens it a little bit further. And then I do have some gentlemen that are prepared to speak to this. And we do understand that if reported out, probably ends up in appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Bentke with the Virginia Charitable Bingo Association. Appreciate you all hearing the bill. This is a very important bill for our charities. We are getting absolutely crushed by the rest of the gaming world and have been for years. We also are under pressure from the new legislation, which could be coming. So we're hoping this will be a continued part of the discussion, which I think is going to lend itself to a bigger discussion in appropriations. So I hope you'll all support it and vote for it to be sent to appropriations.
Thank you. We have, please state your
Mr.
name.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Chuck Lesson. I am currently serving as the chairman of Virginia's Charitable Gaming Board. Thank you for taking up this bill. We have really been in a spiral downward for a number of years. From 2011 to today, there have been 382 charities that have obtained bingo permits. We're down to now 240, and I think the Office of Charitable and Regulatory Programming can attest to the fact that that number continues to go down. As a board, we are now meeting every month. Because of this spiral downward, we're looking for ways for the charities to stay alive. We're talking about the state's FOPs and VFWs, churches, synagogues, private schools, you name it. We are looking for ways to replace this lost bingo revenue. And for years, we have been talking about the fact that a potential silver bullet for our charities would be a Texas Hold'em tournament-style play in our bingo halls. So we are very hopeful that you will give this bill your full consideration. We do believe that it will go a long way in helping the charities, and also our Charitable Gaming Board has voted unanimously to support this effort for the charities all across the Commonwealth.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the patron? Okay, you have the last word.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, as you've heard this, there are many charities that have always relied on bingo. Now they're going to be even greater at risk of funding for their endeavors to help our communities with discussions going on around gambling. And all that we're asking is a chance to go up to appropriations, to have discussion up there to continue to help these charitable endeavors that we've all experienced around the Commonwealth.
Okay, do we have a motion? Okay, we have a motion to report and refer. Clerk will open the roll. This is to report and refer to appropriations.
Mr. Chairman, okay.
All right, the clerk will close the roll. We have 8-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Davis. The Chairman Bolova, you're up. HB 1383.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is House Bill 1383. I'm always very reticent or hesitant to go ahead and use the word simply in any sentence, but this actually is relatively simple with respect to what it's doing, and that is to go ahead and remove the prohibition on selling Virginia lottery over the internet. Just really quickly in terms of the history, the prohibition was put in place in 2006. That was a year before the smartphone was first introduced. Since that time, as I think we're all aware, because we all got them in our pockets, smartphones and e-commerce have not only changed the way that we do things, quite honestly, they've changed our expectations. And so I love being able to get a physical lottery ticket and go ahead and scratch that off. Quite frankly, I don't know that my millennial children would know what to do with something like that. And so there are completely different expectations out there. So this is a very high priority bill for Virginia Lottery, and I just want mention a couple of the reasons, and then would invite Virginia Lottery to come up and provide their perspective. I think the most important one is to keep Virginia Lottery relevant. And so, again, it's important as technology changes expectations that we allow lottery to go ahead and grow with that. The second one is to make sure that lottery can continue to support public education in Virginia. And so, as our Chairman Torian knows, Virginia Lottery generates over $600 million per year in prizes in payments after prizes are paid out, and that goes to public education. As you're also aware, the preponderance of gray machines has taken a very significant toll on the lottery. And just for this year, so in the caboose bill, we're anticipating that we're going to have to backfill that with general funds of about $15.4 million. And so in addition to gray machines, we're also going to be dealing with potential casinos and sports betting. So it's even that more important to be able to keep Virginia Lottery relevant. The last thing I want to make or go ahead and say is that of all the different ways that you can do gaming online, actually Virginia Lottery has some of the very best potential protections out there. And so remember that you can only pay for these things with cash or through debit card. And so that's a natural protection for somebody going ahead and racking up unnecessary debt. The technology is out there to make sure that there are spending caps, and you go ahead and make sure that people use these things widely. iLottery has been very successfully implemented in a number of other states, and so that's Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Michigan, New Hampshire, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. If sales are similar to what was experienced in Michigan, so if you went ahead and translated that into Virginia numbers, you could expect that sales would be about $78 million in the first year, which would generate revenue of about $12 million, and that's expected to grow over time. One of the concerns that we've heard is from your bricks and mortar retailers. I think you'll probably go ahead and hear from them. I think it's very important to note that Lottery takes their partnership with them very, very seriously, and so they wouldn't want to do anything that would hurt them. They want to do something that actually grows Virginia Lottery over the whole. And so as Lottery will be able to tell you, in those states that have introduced iLottery, traffic or the sales for lottery in retail sales has actually increased rather than decreased. And so it's really more about generating interest and relevancy to lottery. So anyways, that is an overview of the bill, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take any questions, but also think the experts with Virginia Lottery would also like to speak.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Bulova. The Virginia Lottery.
Nothing to say. Chairman Bulova, we appreciate his support, and Chairman and members of the committee. Of all the bills you're going to consider this session around expanded gaming, casinos, maybe sports betting, maybe skill game regulation, this is the only bill that has the potential of strengthening lottery sales and profits, which the legislature appropriates for K-12. JLARC noted in its report that every other element of expanded gaming would provide additional competitive pressure on our sales and profits. In fact, JLARC concluded that iLottery could be a tool to help mitigate those losses. We have the support of our friends at the Virginia Education Association, who recognize iLottery is a tool to help us remain competitive in the environment that we're in. Representatives from some of our retail partners may suggest that they have concerns this will reduce their sales. As Chairman Bulova indicated, the 6 states that have implemented iLottery, sales at the counter have continued to increase after. And just as the chairman said, the consumer research indicates that it raises awareness and relevance of the brand, particularly to a younger adult consumer for whom the lottery is not relevant in their lives at all today. So we are in constant conversation with our friends in the bricks and mortar retail side of the business. We are committed to working with them to implement this in a way that causes the least heartburn for them. We may ultimately agree to disagree on this issue, but we will continue to be strong partners and look for ways to grow each other's business. And I do think the context matters here, that many of the same retailers who might express concern about iLottery are the same retailers that are installing gray machines as fast as they can. And those are having a very material impact on our business, so much so that we've had to revise downward our budget forecast for the current year. Also, we are concerned about responsible gaming and providing resources and tools for people. iLottery actually provides more guardrails for players than the retail counter. It is registered adult play with a secure account. There is robust age and ID verification before you can do that. There are guardrails that the user can select to limit their time on the app, their spend on the app. Those are all responsible gaming tools that aren't available at the retail counter. So we are asking you for the ability to provide one more channel for lottery sales. Our fiduciary duty is to raise resources for K-12, and that will be a diminishing.
All right. We have a couple. Chairman Torian has a question for you.
Yes, sir. What is the cost to implement this?
Looking at what other states have spent, it's usually a contract with a vendor that does this with some expertise. Maybe $6 million paid over the life of a multi-year contract.
Where does the money come from?
It would come from operations.
Lottery operations.
Yeah, we're not a general fund agency.
$6 million. Over how long a period of time?
However long the life of the contract would
And
be.
so what do you believe, do you have any idea of what the life of the contract is going to be?
That would depend on how the RFP is structured. For instance, we have a central gaming partner now. Those are 7-year contracts.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the lottery. You said in your remarks that part of your intent is to have an ability to have lottery sales be more attractive and available to a younger demographic. And I just am trying to see if you can reaffirm that, because I would be a little concerned with, a desire for us to pass this as policy because we're trying to make the lottery more attractive to younger people.
Younger adults.
I am aware,
Right.
yeah.
Since this prohibition was enacted, as Chairman Bolivar indicated, in the 14 years, the iPhone has been introduced. E-commerce has changed expectations around commerce. There are young adults now who, frankly, don't go into convenience stores, that have an expectation that they can shop, browse, purchase online where they want, when they want.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question?
Yes, that's good. Okay, you have Delegate Hurst.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, so part of the intent of this legislation is to increase market share among young adults to participate in the lottery.
Correct, responsibly, yes.
You talked a little bit about the guardrails. Do you mind emphasizing that just a little bit more?
Right. The vast majority of lottery purchases now are anonymous for cash at a retail counter. In the digital space, this is registered play. It's a account that is set up that has robust road-tested ID and age verification, like with other purchases that you might do online. It involves setting up a wallet, using, transferring funds either from debit or from a service like PayPal to establish the account. And there's a full suite of tools that would be available, maybe a pop-up reminder. You've been on the app for X number of minutes. You've wagered X number of dollars. Would you like to continue? Again, those are all guardrails that aren't typically available at the retail counter today.
Would there be a maximum amount? Would there be a tool that pops up saying you've over $100 or
Right.
something.
I would presume so. I can't tell you what that number is
Would it
now,
be
but-
like, so right now you have 2 apps, am I correct?
Correct.
So it would be similar to the setup you have?
Correct.
Do we have any other questions? Anybody want to speak against the bill? Okay.
We have a
Or
four.
anybody for it? Yeah, let's do all the fours first. And-
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Kathy Bircher with the Virginia Education Association. We are very grateful that the proceeds for the Virginia Lottery are dedicated to K-12. The K-12 dollars fund, the lottery dollars fund incredibly important programs in the K-12 budget, including some of the programs for our most at-need students. At the VEA, we were very concerned when we saw in the introduced in the caboose and the biennial budget the decreases in revenues and therefore proceeds for K-12 and the need for the state general funds to backfill those dollars. And we are very actively looking at additional revenues for K-12. Our schools really need that support. We had heard about these types of legislation passing in other states and the increased revenues. The fact that in Virginia they're all focused to K-12, we see this as an opportunity to continue to fund the programs and perhaps even add to one of the things I know that the House of Delegates in particular is most proud of over the last few years is the restoration of the 40% for the supplemental per pupil allotment back to school districts. And again, when we look at the proceeds from the lottery cutting back, that without question will be one of the first things that will have to go because of the other programs that are also
Kath,
funded.
one moment. Delegate Ayer has
Do you have, by chance, maybe this is not for you, but do you have projections of the impact that you envision will be the financial state if we do not move in this direction?
I have in the introduced budget, the biennial budget, have $15 million in the first year, or $12 million reduction in the first year and $15 million in the second year that is backfilled through other general fund dollars.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Lamar on behalf of IGT. They're a global leader in lottery and gaming, and they've been a proud partner of the lottery for the last 20 years. We're proud to support Director Kevin Hall's mission to strengthen the lottery and increase revenues for public schools, which currently deliver, I think, about $1.5 million each day for our K-12 education. Chairman Boliva's bill is a next logical step to for lottery to modernize and to attract new players, especially for all of us who are doing everything day in and day out on our smartphones. Appreciate the chairman bringing the bill and would appreciate your support.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Mike O'Connor with Virginia Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Stores. We were one of the supporters of this prohibition back in 2006, but I think recognizing that this is a different time, our position would be to let's continue this discussion in the hopes that something may be emerging that's more holistic and looks at all aspects of this. And we've worked closely with the lottery and appreciate their willingness to work with us and look forward to continuing the discussion during the session.
So you're not in support of the bill?
We do not have a position at this point.
Okay.
We would.
I hear you.
In previous years, we were definitely opposed to the bill, but would like to see a more holistic solution come forward.
Thank you. Mr. Halleck?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Halleck on behalf of Neil Pollard Interactive, and we've actually implemented these programs in other states. And to Delegate Hurst's point, as Director Hall said, you can actually put a lot more safeguards in place for the players through these iLottery programs than you can through the traditional selling of tickets at a convenience store. So there's a lot of technology pieces that have put in place, and we put them in place in other states in order to protect consumers. So I would just reiterate that point, and we're proud to support the bill.
Chairman Torian.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the director, if he could come back, please. Because I'm not sure, I may have missed it. Did you indicate to us what the projected revenue is going to be if we do this?
Right. The JLOC report looked at the first year in Michigan, which was the first state to implement this several years ago. They said if Virginia had a similar experience, revenue of about $78 to $80 million, which would translate into resources for K-12 of about $12 million in the first year. We would expect that to grow incrementally over time.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Chairman Bulova, you have the last word. Oh, I'm sorry. We have some in opposition. You're hiding in the corner there.
Mr. Chairman, I've been around here a little while, and when I see a train, sometimes I get out of the way of it, but in this case, I'm going to get in front of it. Chuck Duvall representing 7-Eleven. We have 740 stores in Virginia. We sell about 20% of the lottery tickets. 7-Eleven funded the referendum that got the lottery on the books, just so you know that. 7-Eleven's been a full partner with the lottery for its full tenure. But right now, that partnership has hit a bump in the road, a pretty significant bump in the road. I'll cut right to the chase. Everybody that's testified before me in favor of this bill, get something out of it. What do we get out of it? We get punished. We brought them to the dance, and now they're taking one of our dancing shoes away from us. We don't make that much money off the lottery, okay? None of the retailers make a big hunk of change off the lottery. It's a 5% commission. That commission has not increased in very, very many years. In fact, it's increased minimally since the thing was introduced. What do we make the money off of? We make the money off the foot traffic, the people that come into the store. Most of those purchases are impulse purchases, okay? Person comes in, lady or gentleman, buy a lottery ticket. Oh, pack of cigarettes, buy a pack of cigarettes. Going home from work, go and buy a six-pack. In the morning, going to get a cup of coffee. Good coffee, by the way. Middle of the day, going to get a snack, going to get a Slurpee. That's going away. We're going to lose foot traffic, and foot traffic means loss of revenue. Found it interesting on this bill, there's not a fiscal impact statement. Mr. Chairman of another committee, I would think you'd be very interested in that fiscal impact statement. Granted, the lottery's going to make some money. Now, what they didn't tell you is in these states where the revenue's gone up, how many of them were accredited because there was a big jackpot? Let me give you an example. In our stores, on an average, there's 50 people a day that come in to buy a lottery ticket. When you hit a big jackpot, you know what that number is? Over 400. Okay? So I don't see, there's no, where they worked that into their formula with all these other states. There hadn't been any other states recently that have passed the internet lottery. And on top of that, I think you need to take into consideration, you people that, Mr. Chairman, and several of you that are on the money committees, I see several faces up there, you need to take into consideration how much sales tax revenue you're going to lose, how much beer excise tax you're going to lose, how much wine excise taxes you're going to lose, because the foot traffic, and you say, oh, they'll get it otherwise. I just got through telling you, a lot of this is impulse purchase. You weren't going to buy it till you got in the store, and all of a sudden you said, I'm going to buy it. If you're sitting home in your boxer shorts and go on the internet and buy one of these things, you're not going to buy these purchases. I think you need to take a hard look at this. Yeah, the lottery's going to benefit, and I want the lottery to succeed. All of us do. They've taken a hit. But you're putting the hit back on your local business people. Now, I know a lot of you have made a commitment, but I've been around long enough to know there's a saying, wise men and wise women change their minds. And I think you really need to take a hard look at this. Lottery's done a good job of selling it, but I don't think you've taken into consideration all the aspects of this. You're getting ready to put some other monkeys on the backs of your retailers back home, too. Got a gas tax coming in, 12 cents over the next 3 years, I think it is. Got a cigarette tax. Could double, could go higher than that. I don't know what other little things are out there that are going to impact. All these things impact these businesses. These are fragile businesses. If you don't believe it, they work on it. And the people that have them, one time we owned all the stores in the state. We franchised them. These people have gone into their life savings and put it on the line to run these stores. And they're getting punished by this bill. That's it, pure and simple. We would hope that you give serious consideration to it. I think at the very least, your money committees need to take a hard look at this because all the numbers are not, I didn't see a number on the bill anywhere. I heard a number from these folks, but I didn't see a number on the bill. So that's our story, and we're sticking with it.
Thank you, Mr. Duval. Okay, do we really quickly, and then Chairman Bulova has the last word.
Mr. Chairman, my name's Todd Gackey with the Family Foundation. I just want to point out two things. I know it was said early on that this is a simple change, but the problem is there's going to be problems that are going to arise from this. More addiction. You're going to put a device into somebody's hand that can start making purchases online much more easier than going into the store and purchasing the tickets. I mean, these are families that can use the money to purchase food, put it into savings. It's going to impact those who can least afford to lose the most. I think it's been mentioned about the millennials and the young people that this is targeting. They've made comments about how they're going to have all these protections in place on the devices, but I don't see that in the bill. And so they're going to rely on some type of third-party company to put in place those protections. Well, what about advertisements about them popping up on phones when you have young kids with phones and trying to cultivate this new population of lottery users, of gamblers? And so I just want to leave you with this, just to put this in perspective, that 1 in 302 million, it is estimated that 1 in 302 million can win the Mega Millions. Compared to being struck by lightning in a given year, that's 1 in a million. You'd have to be struck by lightning 279 times in a year before your odds of actually winning the Mega Millions. Essentially, we're banking on increasing funding for education at the expense of others. And I would ask that this committee to oppose this bill.
Thank you. Chairman Bulova, you have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the subcommittee. And I really do appreciate your consideration and appreciate both sides of this debate. I can't understate, though, how important this is to Virginia Lottery. And I do know that they are extraordinarily committed to making sure that they hold their partners, which are those retailers, harmless and ensure that they continue to thrive and grow. But let me just go ahead and end on this, which is we rely very heavily on Virginia Lottery to be able to support our K through 12 education. And if we don't allow for lottery to grow, to be more relevant, to keep up with basic technology, Virginia Lottery is going to die on the vine. And I think that'll be a real shame because we're going to have to find other revenue sources for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Delegate Torian has a motion.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment I want to make. I was visiting with you earlier when I saw Chairman Bulova come forward and have tremendous respect for him and his leadership and how he governs himself in the General Assembly. And I know that he always takes on any bill quite seriously, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have some reservations and some concerns about the physical impact of this particular bill. So, Mr. Chairman, I want to make a motion, please.
You have the floor.
I want to make a motion that we pass HB 1383 and refer to appropriations.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This requires a clerk can open the rolls. Recorded vote. We're going to send it. Clerk can close the rolls. It's 8-0. We're sending it to appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Cole, HB 37.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 37 I put in at the request of a constituent who would like to be able to distill water without getting an ABC permit. And so the way the bill is drafted, it restricts the, instead of requiring a permit just to own a still, it specifies that it should be for the purpose of distilling alcohol. So anyways, that's quite simply what the bill does. I don't know why somebody who wants to distill water should need a permit from ABC.
Thank you, Delegate. Do we have any questions for the delegate? Delegate Knight? He's not going to touch that. Any questions? I just have a couple little ones. So will this still look like a alcohol? Still, I'm not very conversant in moonshine, right?
I mean, my understanding, I'm not an expert in stills either. Perhaps Delegate Knight would be more appropriate to
Delegate
answer
Knight, could
this
you
question.
describe what the still looks like?
I mean, once you have a still, you could probably distill just about anything. So I'm not sure that there's any significant difference between a still to distill water or distill alcohol. And I think that's probably why initially you needed a permit for any type of still.
Yeah, that sounds like the problem. I mean, it's not like you can make it inoperable for alcohol. Do we have it?
But again, I don't think we should, ban something just because it might be used illegally.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Let's. Do you have anybody speaking? Any witnesses in favor and support, or anybody here in support of the bill? Do we have anybody against the bill that wants to speak against the bill? How does ABC? Mr. Daniel, how do you feel about this? The still that's not a still.
I think we're going to sit still on it. It's late. Come on. Well, it's distilling water. I mean, it's not what we do. So
Okay.
we're okay.
All right, you have the last word.
Again, I think it's a straightforward bill, and I don't know why somebody.
Do we have a
needs
motion?
A permit to
We have
distill.
a motion to report. Do we have a second? Second. All of those. The clerk will open the roll. The clerk will close roll. We've reported 6-1. Thank you, Delegate Cole.
Thank you.
Next up is Delegate Jones, HB 1436.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 1436 establishes the Virginia Spirits Board. The VSB is part of the ongoing effort for the promotion of Virginia-produced spirits within the state. Currently, distilled products account for about 1% of ABC's total sales. The board shall have 11 members. It will also establish the Virginia Spirits Promotions Fund, which will be used to fund the board's activities. The bill solely establishes the board and requires the Spirits Board to work in conjunction with Virginia ABC and submit a report to VDACS in October outlining how they plan to fund the Spirits Promotion Fund after July 1st, 2021. I would be happy to entertain any questions that the committee might have.
Delegate Aird.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Jones, can you tell us why we need this?
I think, Delegate Aird and Mr. Chairman, I would say that we need this bill because we have an ongoing effort to promote produced spirits here in the Commonwealth, and this will further that goal by bringing together folks to expand research, increase education, and promote the production of agricultural suppliers for ingredients necessary for alcohol distillation and production in the Commonwealth.
Are there any further questions for the delegate?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Torian.
Delegate Jones, has ABC weighed in on this?
I believe ABC is here and they are happy to weigh in. Mr. Chairman, Delegate Torian.
Mr. Daniels.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have weighed in it. Our representatives and our friends at the Virginia Distillers Association made us aware of this early on, and we've worked with them to structure it in a manner that we thought would, where we at ABC could work with them, but at the same time they could promote their products, and we are, despite we're for their growth and trying to create the industry and move it along. The only thing we requested, and which is now in the bill, was that to keep the relationship between ABC and I think this is over at Ag, to keep that in sync, we put the he's not happy about it, but we put the CEO on the Spirits Board so that he would have something else to do and could sort of watch the shop as things went along. So we appreciate the delegate and our friends at VDA working with us on the bill.
Thank you. Delegate Hurst?
Yes, question for the patron. We define pretty specifically a Cooper and a maltster. Do you have any information as to how many Coopers and maltsters we actually currently have in the Commonwealth of Virginia who could actually fill these positions on the board?
For those of you, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Hurst, I don't have those exact numbers. I'm sure ABC and/or the distillers can give you that information. If that's a breaking point, I understand, but I think you've distilled the point pretty well.
Thank you, Delegate. Okay, do we have any further questions? Committee operates
Mr. Chairman.
on motion, yes.
I have a motion.
Okay, Delegate Torian.
I have a motion to pass out HB 1436 and refer it to appropriations, please.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to refer to appropriations, to report and refer. This is a recorded vote. Clerk will open the vote. Clerk will close the vote. 8-0. Your bill's going upstairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the committee's spirited questions.
All right. Delegate Head, HB 815.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. What an entertaining afternoon. House Bill 815 is a bill I brought on behalf of a constituent of mine who contacted me after the holiday season because he is an alcoholic. And he said, you know, I fully understand that there are going to be beer ads on that I don't have any control over because that's private industry. But why is it that ABC, which has a monopoly on the sale of hard liquor, is coming on the airwaves and trying to tell me to come into the ABC store just to buy stuff and not promoting a specific brand? I mean, they are, after all, a monopoly, and why should, as he put it, why should my tax dollars do this? Now, I understand that it's not tax dollars that go to fund that advertising. It's generated from within the ABC network, but it still is public funds. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know, I think he's probably right. It's one thing to have the monopoly, but it's another thing to run the ads. And if you even compare this to beer and wine, when you see an ad for a particular brand of beer, they're not telling you, run out and buy beer. They're saying, buy this particular brand. But ABC ads over Christmas were, you know what, you're going to have friends coming in. You should stop by and stock up in case somebody stops by that you need to support. Or you got gifts that you could give. You should stop by and buy stuff at the ABC store. And again, it's the only place you can go to buy it. We have a monopoly on it. Seemed like a pretty reasonable idea to me. As we researched the bill, turns out that the lottery board has a very similar provision. They can advertise a specific game, but they're prohibited from advertising in a way that would specifically say, come on down and buy a lottery ticket right now. You can buy this game. You can play this game, but you don't do these things. So it's a similar provision to what we've got in place for lottery and just, you know, I know there's going to be some opposition to this, but I needed to bring this for my constituent, and hopefully you'll think it's a good idea too.
Thank you, Delegate. Do we have any questions for the delegate? No. Do you have anybody speak in favor? Anybody in opposition?
Just me.
Here we do have some opposition.
Yes, sir,
Mr.
Mr.
Daniel.
Chairman, John Daniel. We don't often have positions in opposition to legislation, but we do.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, I neglected to say I had a line amendment. Not that it's going to make a lot of difference, I don't think, in the opposition, but there is a line amendment that I forgot to do. And do we have that up and ready? If it would be all right.
Go ahead.
Okay.
To try to
All
get
right.
that
So we have a line amendment.
up
Is
in
it
front of us,
prepared?
Because
Mr. Chair, the line amendment would be on line 119 after advertising, insert, except for point of sale advertising at a government store for the sale of alcoholic beverages. So it basically excludes from this prohibition on advertising the ABC's ability to do point of sale advertising within their stores at the register.
And Mr. Chairman, if it would, if that is the pleasure to add that into the bill, the idea behind that was once somebody has gotten to the store, promoting one thing over another and trying to promote the sale while they're there because this one's on sale or whatever, I don't see it's a restriction on that. It's just simply trying to entice them to come into the store to begin with that we were trying to get at.
So if the bag that the alcohol's put in talks about buying more alcohol, that's not a problem.
And actually the bags never do. It's just the signage in the store and things of that nature.
Okay,
So-
thank you, Delegate
Not
Head.
that I frequent the ABC store.
So we have a
more than
motion to approve the amendment. Do we have a second? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, the line amendment, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment is passed. Mr. Daniel's still speaking to in opposition.
Thank you for
Are
letting
you-
me interrupt.
No, that's no problem. I
Thank
think we're at the same place, and we talked to Delegate Head about this early on. We're terribly sympathetic about the catalyst for the reason that he brings this bill, and we understand that. And as you all know, we do contribute a fair amount of money to certain agencies to help with sobriety and alcoholism and other things. So I don't want our opposition to be taken in any way, shape, or form as not sympathetic to those illnesses which are real and which need to be addressed. Our opposition really stems from the fact that our advertising, the small amount of advertising dollars that we do spend contributes significantly year over year to sales. Those sales then result in profits. Profits are then allocated in certain ways by folks on the Appropriations Committee.
Gotcha.
So that's the basis.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to try to speed things through, and it's getting late, but we get the gist of it. Okay. Anybody else? We have another person who wants to speak against.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ross Scrogg on behalf of the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States. We work hand in hand with responsibility.org on these issues, but we are opposed to limiting ABC from operating like a business. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Brittany Zamborski on behalf of the Virginia Distillers Association. I'd like to echo Ross's comments, and we also oppose this bill.
All right, thank you. Any other, you have the final word?
One thing I would add, just again in comparison with the lottery, last year the lottery during Gambling Awareness Month ceased all of their advertising for 1 month. It was their record sales month for the year.
Wow.
So
maybe it's counterintuitive. Maybe they don't need to advertise. All right, do we have a motion? Okay, go ahead.
Delegate Head, real quick, it was brought to my attention on here, Delegate Carol Foy is going to bring up a bill in a minute, that we haven't taken action on, but there is a section in the Code of Virginia that if someone is an interdicted person, which is in the code, a habitual drunkard, and they get declared as such, they're not legally allowed to buy alcohol in the state of Virginia. So your gentleman probably doesn't want to go down that route, but this portion of the code, if he had a moment and he wanted to tell folks that, then they legally couldn't sell him any alcohol in the state of Virginia.
All right, do we have a motion? Any other committee opportunity on a motion? Or do we have any? Nobody. All right, there's not lack of a motion. Just stays in the.
I appreciate the committee's consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. All right, speaking of Delegate Foy, you are up. Delegate Murphy, you're going to be next.
Good evening, members of the committee and Mr. Chairman. I have House Bill 923, Alcoholic Beverage Control, And what my bill does is repeal the interdiction statute in Virginia. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals has already determined that the habitual drunkard statute, which I seek to repeal, is unconstitutional. The interdiction statute is an antiquated law dating back to 1800s, and according to the code, the law creates a process for prosecutors to ask a circuit court judge in Virginia, even if the person's not present and without counsel, to make that person a habitual drunkard. There is no definition for habitual drunkard. There's no amount of times they have to have been convicted of a crime. It's just the allegation made by the prosecutor is oftentimes sufficient. And once the civil judge declares that person a habitual drunkard, they can no longer purchase or possess or consume alcohol in the Commonwealth of Virginia, not even in one's own home. Virginia and Utah are the only states in the nation that has this law. And in 2016 and 2017, 1,115 people were convicted under the interdiction statute for possession of alcohol by an interdicted person. And as of August 2015, there are 4,743 convictions of interdicted persons. So House Bill 923 is about nothing more than repealing an antiquated law that has a disparate impact on people who have potential addiction issues and who are homeless, as the Court of Appeals has found. It also has an impact on retailers. And so if a retailer is found selling alcohol to an interdicted person, they can face a Class 1 misdemeanor, meaning up to 12 months in jail and a $2,500 fine. So to put this into practice, what that looks like is an employee at Walmart, a cashier at Walmart, who has 10,000 transactions, is responsible for knowing whether or not a person who's purchasing alcohol is interdicted or not. And if they sell alcohol to that interdicted person, then they can be convicted up to a Class 1 misdemeanor.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Chairman Torian.
Delegate Carol Ford, please just put this in simple terms for me. What are you asking us? Put it in just very basic, simple terms so I can understand what you're saying.
Sure. I'm asking you to repeal a statute that the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals has already deemed as unconstitutional.
Okay, do we have any questions for the delegate? Delegate Hurst.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Delegate Carol Foy, what did the Circuit Court of Appeals actually invalidate? Was it 41322, the possession where, someone can be drunk on a sidewalk and then be cited again? Or is it also these other parts of Title 4.1 that we're seeking to amend here? Because while I would not want, someone that typically is struggling with alcoholism or struggling with a dependence on alcohol, oftentimes homeless. We don't want to penalize them, criminalize them for that. But I do have a little bit of heartburn about, allowing them to continue to be able to purchase alcohol in the future, being able to get a concealed handgun permit, those types of things. So additional clarification will be helpful.
Sure. The court deemed that the actual statute itself, the habitual drunkard statute, is unconstitutional.
On its face?
They said because of the disparate impact on homeless individuals and people struggling with addiction.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
follow-up
Delegate
question. Delegate Carol Foy, but that is 41322 that they said is unconstitutional, or all of the other parts of, of 4.1 that we're seeking to amend here?
Committee's indulgence.
Do we? What about council? Go ahead.
The 433 or the 433? It's the 322. 322. Okay.
Using the interdiction process.
Sure. The answer to Mr. Chairman, the answer to the delegate's question is it's 4.1-322 and Virginia Code 4.1305.
Okay. Okay. We have a
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate would like to make a motion.
I think that among some of us here on the dais and also staff, we want to have an opportunity to look at this a little bit closer before we take any meaningful action on it. So I have a motion.
Okay.
that this legislation go by for today, please.
We have a motion to go by. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a second, and that is is voice vote. So all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're going to take this by for the day. It doesn't mean we're not going to, we're going to try to work on it next Tuesday. We'll put it on the docket.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Delegate Murphy. I know.
I almost forgot why I was here.
It's something to do with alcohol.
You think?
It's not coffee.
True. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is HB 598, and it creates a mixed beverage performing arts license for a venue in Tyson's Capital One, located in Fairfax County. Oh, can I move the amendments, please?
Yes. Does council have the
I was
amendment?
going to get to that. but-
Okay, is it a line amendment? Do we have that? Do we have copies? Yeah, so we're at ease. Do you want to take?
I guess.
Do you want to take this by for a few minutes and let Delegate Wampler present? Yeah, let's do that. Delegate Murphy, is that okay? All right. Delegate Wampler. Thank you for being patient.
It's good education for the full committee, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, been working on this bill for a couple of weeks, House Bill 1187. Thanks to DLS, we have a amendment in the nature of a substitute. I think.
Okay, the council's going to give us the. All right, Delegate, you want to explain? Do we have a motion to approve the amendment in the nature of a substitute? Second. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So the amendment in the nature of a substitute is passed, and we're discussing that now. So would you like to explain the new bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
House Bill 1187 amends an existing provision of the code relating to the operation of government stores. I could give you brief context. In Virginia, beer, cider, and wine is able to be sold online and shipped directly to consumers. This bill would allow for licensed distillers, otherwise referenced as government stores in the bill, to do the same. We've had some concerns in the first couple weeks of session with various stakeholders, which I think the substitute addresses. A lot of concern around the issue of delivering a distilled spirit to a home with maybe an adolescent present or someone under the age of 21. You'll notice on page 2 of the bill, in the lines 41 through 52, there are many provisions there which tighten up on that issue. This would allow the alcoholic beverage, the ABC, to regulate the online sale of these spirits by only one case per person per month. And it also allows ABC Board to select common carriers, such as like a FedEx or a UPS, and would require that any delivery recipient provide proof of their age verification, 21 years of age, before any delivery could be given to that person. So in short, that's the bill. I know many of you have been here for 5 hours, so I'll let some speak to the bill if they'd like, at the chairman's pleasure.
Thank you, Delegate.
Can take any
So
questions.
so to be clear, it's very similar to the same kind of transport setup that we have with beer and wine.
Yes, sir.
Same. So like UPS or FedEx.
Specifically, the bill 1187 allows the ABC board
To decide that.
to decide who the common carrier is approved to take goods from these distilleries.
So that an underage drinker would not be able to get the alcohol.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Delegate Van Valkenburg, really quickly.
Pardon my ignorance, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pardon my ignorance, but what does one case per month per customer mean?
Is that a lot of alcohol?
Delegate Van Valkenburg, similar to the beer and wine restrictions, which are a little bit more. I think there's 2 cases allowed in the case of beer and wine. This would allow just 1 case per person per month.
Follow up.
Yet, Delegate.
2 cases of beer, though, seems a lot different than 1 case of hard than liquor. That seems like a big leap. Like if I drink 2 cases in a month of beer, I'd be drinking a beer and a half a day. I'm not good at math. I think that's right. If I was drinking 1 case of liquor per month, I'd be drinking a bottle a day. Is that no?
I don't know.
That's
How many
not
fluid
right.
ounces? How many ounces in a case?
How many bottles?
How many bottles in a case? 12 bottles in a case, and each bottle is how many ounces?
I suppose it could vary between the bottling, depending on
What's the most it could be?
distiller. Probably 750 milliliters.
All right, we're going milliliters. New math.
Delegate Van Valkenburg, if I may answer, I think the reason we put one case per person per month is because that is what the ABC is used to regulating for beer and wine, and so it's a similar statutory scheme for liquor and distilled spirits.
Delegate Van Valkenburg.
I guess that just gives me a little heartburn. That's a lot of liquor that we're sending out. Do you guys are cool with that?
Do
I mean, yeah, we're cool with it. I mean, we agreed. we agreed to it, but I don't want to disagree with you that it is a lot. But this is what we got cool with our friends at the VDA on. But it is a lot, and it's certainly your equation with respect to its relativity to beer and wine was precise. So it's a lot, but they're going to ship it, and I don't know how you ship 6 bottles or whatever. No, I know it's 12 now, but we're talking about 12 being a lot. So 6 would be
So,
a lot.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
ABC, are you saying that you're okay with online sales? Is that?
We are. That was the fundamental issue. We weren't quite ready for ABC to do it. We do internet sales now, where licensees can make an internet order, and we'll gather it up and put it at a store, and they pick it up. But we just don't have the capacity at ABC to do home delivery at the current time. We will once the new warehouse and facilities get constructed. But we didn't want that to hold up what Delegate Wampler was trying to do with respect to the distillery stores, who are smaller and do have the technical and capacity to do internet and home delivery.
But, Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Delegate.
But you're talking about selling to individual customers, just
Yes.
not businesses.
Well, most of
Am I-
our
am I
customers
correct?
are,
I mean, I'm talking about like if
for
like
instance,
if I make a purchase online, you can ship it to me. I'm not talking about like restaurant owners.
We won't ship it to your home. We'll ship it to a store that you designate, in your neighborhood that you may pass on the way going home, so you can stop there and pick it up. But we don't do home delivery.
Okay.
But we didn't want to stand in the way of Delegate Wampler's desire and our VDA friends to do home delivery. But the volume is, call it a policy decision for you all.
So you're planning to do it though. So this is going to happen in the future. If you're going to come back to us.
Once our new warehouse is up and the technology is there so that you can segregate orders in such a manner and have the delivery possibility, that would be the plan. I mean, we know what people want.
Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, is there a I'm sorry to be blowing this up, but is there a standard by which this is normally done? Is this done in other states where, is it the same? It's like, you're in New York and they ship you a case of Jack Daniels, or you're in Florida and they send you, just to kind of contextualize it maybe?
I'm sure about other states. It's all right. Phone a friend. It's not unusual at all.
Do we have anybody else who wants to speak on the bill? Here we do.
I'm Janet Settle, and I can actually speak to that. Anybody knows me knows I love bourbon. I've done the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. They do not allow shipment from the distilleries, but in California, you can ship, and you have to sign for it. I've actually had some favorite things shipped to me, and you just have to sign as an adult, and it was delivered by FedEx.
From California, you had it shipped here?
Right. It was a special bottle that I couldn't get anywhere.
Is that legal?
Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm going to jail now. But
all right. Do we have
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Delia Wampler.
The difference in this bill and what I think I heard from Delegate Torrey and in part from Delegate Valkenberg is currently the ABC is able to do online sales. What this would allow is for the local distilleries from across all of our districts to put their products, their distilled spirits, online for sale. Then a third-party common carrier authorized by the board could pick it up from the local distiller and take it to the home of an individual in the Commonwealth. So this bill is limited both to Virginia distilleries and to lawful residents in the Commonwealth that are older than 21. So we're not talking about interstate sale here. This isn't related to any goods coming in from another state.
So there's no way you could be ordering from Tennessee or Kentucky or anything like that?
Not under this bill.
Okay. Do we have anybody? Did you want to, Tom, do you want to speak to it?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, Tom Lisk, representing the Virginia Restaurant and Lodging Association. Everybody's doing delivery today with beer and wine. I mean, every grocery store is doing it, every big box retailer, restaurants are delivering beer and wine with food orders. Delivery is what consumers expect. Now that we're 20% of the way through the 21st century, we're glad to see delivery coming for spirits in some fashion. As an industry, we hope that one day ABC will get into the delivery business to restaurants. We buy nearly 20% of the distilled spirits that the state sells, but we can't have it delivered. Here, mixed beverage licensees, restaurants might be able to at least get a case from a local distillery. We'd find that very helpful. But again, we just see this hopefully as a very small first step toward delivery for all of us so that we can have the same privileges for receiving home delivery or deliveries to our businesses that have been in place for decades for beer and wine.
Thank you, Tom. Delegate Aird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my issue is not around the internet sale and or the delivery. I'm more concerned, and this is piggybacking off of what was stated earlier, is the volume in that the statement 1 case or the 2 cases of low alcohol per month. And so I guess my question is there a better way to get at that element of what you're proposing? Because it does seem like a high variable depending on what's being purchased within that case to allow so on a monthly basis.
And also Delegate Hurst.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to help answer. Sorry, thank you. Mr. Chairman, to help piggyback off of what Delegate Aird said, let's think of it this way. When we think of permissible ounces per drink and what we generally think of as a safe amount to be drinking or a healthy amount to be drinking per night, 3 shots, 3 ounces a night seems reasonable to me. You do the math, that's 90 ounces per month. You do that to milliliters, and it would be about 2,500 to 3,000 milliliters per month. I wonder if we might not say that if you're going to be shipping a case of liquor, that's fine, but the total volume of the liquor in that case shouldn't exceed 2,500 to 3,000 milliliters per month. That would be my suggestion, not meant as an amendment, but just meant to add to the conversation from Delegate Aird.
Delegate Wamper, I understand there is a companion bill to this in the Senate. It looks to me like the sense of the committee here is that if you had a lower amount, we would be okay with that. And we could amend that now, and then we can worry about it in conference with the Senate one if that's the case. No pun intended. But so why don't we could you offer a friendly amendment, Delegate Aird, or Delegate Knight?
What I would like to see is I totally agree with what everyone says. I think you ought to flesh out exactly what a case amount is, and without putting pressure on the gentleman, I see our chairman back there, and if we could maybe pass this today in concept, get an amendment on what we think a case amount is, and if we could possibly hear it in full committee. Mr. Chairman, would that sound reasonable to you to move the train along? Thank you.
Okay, we get a high sign from the chairman. So that's that. With that, could you give this to us in the form of a motion? Yeah.
Delegate, my charge to you is to try to get with legislative services. You've heard what we say here. I think the consensus is 12 bottles is probably too much in a case. I think we need to get a definition of the case for this bill. And I will make a motion to approve with a conceptual amendment that you can get with them to draft, and we'll bring it to full committee.
That's committee's will.
Okay, so we have a second. So the clerk we're basically passing a substitute here. Oh yeah, we need a motion to report the substitute.
So moved.
Okay, second. Okay, we've got a motion to report the substitute. Clerk will open the roll. Okay, so you've got your charge.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you very much.
members of the
7 to
committee.
1.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I just opened over Delegate Wampler so it goes in the contested docket, and he'll.
Thank you, Delegate. Good idea. Okay, Delegate Murphy, the best, almost for last. We actually have 2 more bills after you.
You're kidding.
Nope, we got the biggest one coming up. Delegate
Okay.
Knight.
Now, this is House Bill 598. And yes, it has amendments, but we'll deal with those in a minute. It creates a mixed beverage performing arts license for a venue, which is Capital One Hall in Tyson's Corner, which is located in Fairfax County. And it authorizes the licensee to sell alcoholic beverages for on-premises consumption on the dates of performances or events at Capital One Hall. Currently, requesting legislation for the creation of this type of license is pretty standard procedure. David has the amendments, and he can fill you in.
Okay.
Or someone
Council's going to pass out the amendments.
Mr. Chair, there would be 4 line amendments. The first is on line 186, after any, insert corporate and. The second is on line 186, after the, insert corporate and. The third is on line 187, after lease, insert comma, management, comma. And the final and fourth line amendment is on line 193, which would entail the insertion of a enactment clause. And bear with me, basically what this is a provision that I came up with that will hopefully help this jive with the big ABC omnibus bill, so that when that bill passes and repeals next summer, the code of section here that this amendment is made in, that this new provision that we would be adopting if it's reported out of subcommittee would not disappear. So that enactment would read that if section 4.1-210 of the Code of Virginia, as amended by this act, is repealed by an act of assembly passed by the 2020 session of the General Assembly, and such act reorganizes the licenses set forth in the former section 4.1-210 as amended by this act by relocating such licenses in various sections of the Code of Virginia, The annual mixed beverage performing arts facility license created by this act shall remain in effect and shall be relocated in the subdivision in which other annual mixed beverage performing arts facility licenses are relocated. So just to recap there, what it says is this provision will live on past the repeal of section 4.1-210, and it will be moved to the new subdivision where we have consolidated the existing performing arts facility licenses together.
Okay, we have a motion. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the amendments have passed. So you have the last word.
Well, the last word
Well,
is I
you have the
request
first, last, and everything.
that you pass this bill.
Okay. I think, yeah, do we have a motion? We have a second? Okay, clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll. We have 8-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to give the gavel to Chairman Torian and present my bill, HB 1525. It shouldn't take but a few seconds, and then we're going to go to what you've all been waiting for. Thank you, Chairman. This bill, 1525, is to create a tribal land repatriation program and fund. This will allow tribes to apply for grants to help with purchase and recovery of land. The fund would be administered by the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and this fund is really a small step towards righting the wrongs of the past and trying to help the tribes. We have now 7 tribes that are federally recognized, and having this kind of a fund will allow them to leverage the money to be able to access some federal money to get land and help them with their businesses. We only have 2 tribes, Pamunkey and the Mattaponi, that have currently own parts of the original reservation land, but some tribes like the Rappahannock have never received full payments for their land sales. In many instances, the government took the land in the first place and didn't fully compensate the tribe. So I think it's our duty now to work to fix this on the state level. And I've been working, my delegate McQuinn is the chief patron on this bill, and we have a budget amendment to jumpstart this fund. But I just want to point out that the tribes, the 6 tribes that have been federally recognized have given up the ability to do gaming. And so I think this is a small way to recompense that and thank them. And so without further ado, I hope you'll pass this.
Delegate Knight.
Mr. Chairman, we've seen these before, and what it is kind of open a checking account so we can receive funds, and I think it's a good bill. I think you may even be considering an amendment to this bill in the future on something, but Mr. Chairman, I think I'll ask you, I believe the proper motion would be report to refer, because I believe you would have to look at it to create that fund. So.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we report and refer HB 1525 to appropriations. Please cast your votes.
All right, clerk, close the roll. Thank you. That passes 8-0. Now, our grand finale, Delegate Knight.
Yes, sir, this is House Bill 390. Probably one of the most important things I'm going to tell you is the chief co-patron on this bill is Chairman Bulova. So anyways, if y'all want to make a motion now, fine. If not, I'll continue. House Bill 390 is a product of extensive study during the interim by the Virginia ABC Authority. The study was requested by the Senate committee. We, in the House committee, we assisted with this. We've had numerous meetings. It accomplishes many objectives, but this legislation brings true and effective regulatory reform to the licensing and permitting functions of Virginia ABC. and through the combination of existing privileges into similar and existing license types, the variety of license types are reduced by approximately 50%. It's important to note, we're not doing away with any, we're just consolidating this, so the code is going from here to about like this. So we've reduced the pages. We've got, over the years, we've created new licenses, and we keep doing these Christmas trees. As Delegate Hurst knows, he's hanging a few ornaments on there himself. So what we're trying to do is we're going to have a new marketplace license in this bill. We're probably going to have some others in this bill. This legislation raises approximately $2.5 million for ABC for law enforcement. And that 2.5, which is included in the governor's introduced budget, will fund another 26 people. Only a handful of these will be sworn officers. We're trying to do pen and paper for audits, if you can. And currently, the law enforcement is one agent to 200 licenses, and it's even higher than that. So we're trying to get some enforcement in here, but we're trying to get this code to where we can do more audits and such. This, I can go through the details. One thing that I want to let you know, most of this bill is going to have a delayed effective date of July 1 of 2021. That's some of the basics. I'd now like to yield to David May, and he's got a number of amendments. Some of them were from the Senate. We've got one or two add-ons since then. And Mr. May?
Sure. Mr. Chair, I guess I'll pause for a moment while y'all get acquainted and get your documents there. I'm going to try my best to refer to some line numbers and maybe walk you through a little bit of what this substitute changes as opposed to the introduced version. And if there are any questions as far as just the overall basics of the bill, period, I'll be happy to answer those as well or do a brief walkthrough, but I'll start by going through the differences between the substitute and the original bill.
Before you begin, let's have a motion to adopt a substitute.
Second.
All those in favor of adopting the substitute signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the substitute's adopted. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, so the first set of amendments included in the substitute are some amendments that were made on the Senate side. These are purely technical. I'll walk through them briefly. The first is on line 1111. It changes some language regarding an on-premises licensee to an on- and off-premise licensee. One of the big pieces of this bill was to get rid of on-premises licensees and say that 99% of our licensees that have on-premises privileges will also have off-premises privileges. So the language just didn't match up with the overall intent of the bill in its original form. The next is on line 1347. And this relates to a provision that allows a winery to sell wine produced by other wineries at their winery. And this would impose a requirement that for any wine that a winery sells that they did not produce, they have to purchase that wine from a wholesale wine licensee. That's current law, but the wholesalers were more comfortable with that language included in the bill, so we added it in. We did the same thing on line 1364. And then the last Senate-related amendment would be on line 1446. We changed an or to an and. And what that did was for mixed beverage restaurant licensees, it clarified in the minds of some that their wine and beer license that they automatically get by virtue of having a mixed beverage restaurant license would include the ability to sell wine and beer both for on-premises consumption and off-premises consumption, not one or the other. So moving on to the second set of amendments, we have an overall scheme in the bill of deleting permit fees out of the code and allowing ABC to collect fees for permits. They're giving out a lot of permits that they haven't collected fees for years, and basically have been doing things for free. They weren't sure about their authority to impose a fee, so we just clarified that by putting a provision in saying that they could collect a fee in the original bill, and then we realized later there were a few permit fees that were still included in the code, so we went back and cleaned that up and made sure those amounts were removed. The third amendment is in the 8th enactment, all the way at the end of the bill. And what this does is it's basically a copy and paste enactment. All of this language is already in the bill and has been in the bill since the beginning. But what it does is it moves the timeline up a little bit for our amendment to the mixed beverage carrier license. It'll put that in effect for this July instead of next July for certain constituents that wanted to go ahead and get moving on this new structure. The next set is on line 4. Wait, no, it's on line, sorry, line 23, 2298 and 2303. This is language in our tied house section, and it specifically refers to banquet licensees and when they can be issued to certain manufacturers, I believe manufacturers of wine and manufacturers of malt beverages. It makes clear, which is already current practice over at ABC, that one or more licensees can apply for a banquet license together in the event of, say, a craft brewer wanted to have a couple other craft brewers come in, host a special event together. They could do that. This clarifies that. They're already able to do that, but the language is a little bit better, and that it also clarifies that when they're doing that, they're limited to 8 per year, and even if they're only a partial licensee on that permit, that's going to count for one of their 80-year maximum licenses that they can use. And then the 5th category of changes relates to casinos. And basically what it does is, since it was our opinion that casinos could get a mixed beverage restaurant license if they want under current law, but we did create a new fee structure for casinos, which you can see on lines 2767 and 2879. So the first line, 2767, that's the state fee that you're going to have for casinos, which is always higher than the local fee for any license that we have. And under the structure that we created, a casino, and speaking with ABC, it's our thought as of now that the enforcement demands would be a little bit higher on casinos. So in light of that, they would pay the same fee amount as a normal mixed beverage restaurant licensee, but on top of that, there would be a fee of $5 for every gaming device that they have. We're going to tweak that language slightly that I can get ready for full committee. We're going to add on gaming station just to make sure we're covering the tables as well. And those are pretty much the changes that are included in the amendment. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the original bill.
Thank you. So are there any questions regarding the changes? Delegate Knight. Hold on, Delegate Moorfield.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, just a question for clarification on line 2768, the $5 fee per gaming machine. Could someone explain?
That's a gaming machine, and we're going to include in there a gaming station. So that means every time that you have a slot machine is $5, and every time that you have a table of 21 or a craps table or a roulette, that would be also a gaming station. So we're using the gaming machine and or gaming station to include all of what I just said.
Mr. Chairman, for
follow up.
So is that standard practice in other states that have legalized casino gambling? They base a fee off of the
Yes,
machines?
it is.
Okay.
And there's varying amounts in there, and we kind of picked one kind of in the middle.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Chairman, all I'll say is this is a large bill with an awful lot of input for a lot of time. Of course, we relied on the expertise of ABC in there, but you know, I can't tell you how many iterations we've had. You see how thick this thing is, and if we didn't have the institutional knowledge of David May, this thing wouldn't happen in as nice a form as it is. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's been a lot of hard work on this.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Delegate, for all you put into this. Do we have anybody who wants to testify in support or against? Do you have any, do we have any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Torian.
So basically, Delegate Knight, what you're doing with this legislation is that we are reforming the number of licenses that we're operating under and also making the appropriate adjustments in the fee structure.
Absolutely. Exactly, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
Okay. Delegate has a motion.
I move to report.
Okay, we have a motion to report and a second. The clerk will open the roll. All those in favor of reporting signify by saying yea, against nay. Okay, the clerk will close the roll. It's been reported 8-0. Thank you very much, everybody. And I appreciate your my very first time being a chair, and I'm sure I've slowed it down a little bit, but it's not too late, is it? We still can get dinner. Thank you very much. See you next week. We got more bills next week. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we are now adjourned.